Alright guys, welcome to another video for chat application course. In this video I'm going to get list of conversation and get list of users, and I'm going to start with adding the basic function for getting list of conversation in conversations controller. First of all, I'm going to remove this boilerplate, and here we need to add a constructor for middleware. This middleware JWT, which we have already added this middleware, and of course I'm going to add my first function, which is get list of conversations. We need to pass type, and of course we need to get list of conversations, which we're going to use a scope, in this case conversations. We also need to pass type. So here, as you can see, we're going to get list of conversations based on a specified scope, which is here, and we're going to add this, and then we're going to simply return the result of this query. So let's open our conversations, and here to add a new scope you can simply type public function scope and a scope name. So we need query and type. We're going to return query with latest and get eventually. Now before this, we're going to check our type, since we're going to get basically list of conversation based off their type. So we need to apply some conditions. I'm going to check in case type is all. We're going to apply where conditions, actually multiple where conditions, and a where has condition to simply check in case a logged in user is related to the return conversation. So first of all, we're going to check user ID 1. We need to make sure if user ID is matched with logged in user ID, or where user ID 2 is matched with auth ID, or where has members, and in these members user ID matched with one of these members. So if you remembered, we're using these members or conversations members to simply add users to a group of conversations. So in this case, user might be a creator or a guy who just joined the private chat, or in this case might be a part of or a member of a group conversation. So we're going to check in case user is part of that group conversation, where member ID is matched with logged in user ID. Great. Now we need to add these members. So public function members, and the relation is has many, in this case has many conversation members class, and we need to look for conversation ID. Great. Now we have another condition as if type in case type is private, we will apply basically a where condition with user ID and type, which in this case is private. So let's check in case user ID is logged in user actually is related to this query, and then we're going to make sure the item which or conversation which we're going to return is private, and of course over to make sure we check user ID too. Auth ID, and of course we need this one, and this should be it. We need another in case type is group. We're going to apply type group, and we're going to add another query, which in this case is whereas function. We need query, and we can simply copy and paste this here to get the final result. So as you can see, we're going to get a type, and we're actually going to pass type to a scope, and we're going to check the type, and in case it's all, we're going to get list of conversation which they are private and group, and in case it's private, we're going to only get private conversation, and of course in case it's group, we're going to get list of conversations which they are actually group conversations. This can be simplified. As you can see, I'm going to use a separated query here. You can also do this for this one, but I'm going to keep this just like how it is. Now we can simply return conversation. Let's actually response conversations. Let's open our roots, and let's add this root API for this one. It should be root get conversations, and of course we need type. And since we're going to use this API in modules, we don't need to import the controller, since Laravel 8 is using another way of actually importing and calling the specific action in controller. So we can simply say conversations controller and get conversations. Let me check. Let's copy this one also and paste, and this should be it. We're going to test this in our front. Let me check again. Get conversations. Well, that looks good for now, so let's also add get friends. So we are in users controller. I'm going to actually add another controller here, so let's add this H3 artisan module make controller let's call this friends controller for users module. Great. Let's delete these boilerplates. We need constructor, and we need to apply middleware AWT. Close this, and we need to add our first function, which in this case is get friends. Of course, we need a parameter here or argument. We're going to use another scope for friends, which in this case the scope name is get friends. We're going to pass a status, and eventually we're going to return friends for now. And I'm going to keep this response very basic, and in next video we actually going to use resources, so let's keep this simple for now to get the results. Let's create this scope, public function scope, paste, and we need query and status. So we're going to use switch in this time, and we need to pass a status. Let me return this first. Query with user 1 and user 2. We're going to get user information and get. So let's start with the first one. In case status is all, we're going to apply a where or where condition. User ID it's matched with logged in ID user, and or where user ID 2 is matched with ID of logged in user. Split this, and in case status is request, we're going to apply another very eloquent query here. We're going to check in case the status is not approved, and of course we're going to check user ID. Let's break, and another case approved, where status is approved and user ID is matched with ID of logged in user. Or where, let's copy this one here, and let's just change this to 2. Then we're going to break this, and last item is ignored. We're going to simply get list of friends based on ignore the status. This should be 1. So I've got all requests, approve, ignored. I think something is missing. This should be actually, another one should be actually here for not approved. And that's it. So the difference between this one is we're going to get list of friends requests and we're going to get list of not approved requests. So in this case, when user sending a request to user number 2, or in this case X sending a request to Y can simply get list of requests with this query, and in case X sending another request to Y can simply get list of not approved requests in case he simply ignore or just didn't approve the friend request. And in this case we can simply get list of requests without limitation, and for this one we're going to get list of approved requests. For this one we're going to simply get list of ignored friends requests. Everything looks good. Let me add another route for this one. Route get friends, need the status, friends controller, get friends. Let's refactor this and let's copy and let's paste this here to make sure there is not a typo in our code. Let's close everything here. So we need to test these APIs. We're actually going to a wrong directory here, resource assets, and let's actually load list of conversation and friends in this component. So let's start with adding app methods. Excuse me, app methods, sort default, get data. Let's import this. Now let's add this in methods, and then in created we're going to check in case user is logged in. We're going to call this get data function to simply get list of users and friends. So I'm going to use promise.all to call multiple API. Let's use get. First one is get friends, and the default status I'm going to set this to approved. Let's duplicate, and next one is conversations, and I'm going to set type to all. Now for then we're going to use Axios Spirit, and here we're going to specify the response based on the order of these items. The first one is friends and the next one is conversations. And here I'm going to simply console log friends and conversations. Let's keep this very actually simple for now. So to just test the API, console log. This is not actually necessary for now, and this should be work. Let's test, let's reload, let's open our network tab, approve, token as expired, great. Let's remove everything. Let's reload and let's log in. So we had this one. Let's actually check. I forgot which one is for this course. Chat Khojasteh, and we had John Doe. Log in, great. Now let's reload. Let's check our network tab. There's nothing here and there's nothing here. Great. Now let me add something here for test. So I've got user with ID of 2. Let's insert. Let's keep this 2, let's keep this empty, set this to group, let's set this to YouTube for group name, and also let's specify a default date for this item. Alright, to fix this problem, it should be a structure problem. Well, there's a problem with my XAMPP, obviously, so let's forget about fixing this from here. Let's go to migrations and in conversations. So this should be new label. Let's migrate. Well, let's actually remove migrations for conversations. Never mind, let's migrate fresh. So user should be logged in, logged out actually, since there is no information for this one, and we already removed this user with creating new data. Let's register, switch to register, copy, paste, paste and paste. Now let's reload, and now let's add a conversation. This time there shouldn't be an error. YouTube. Go. Great, it's working. Now let's reload. Let's check our network. Preview. And here, as you can see, I'm getting list of conversations. Let's duplicate this user. Let's change everything here related to email and name. Let's go and let's create another conversation. This time I'm going to set this to private. Don't need YouTube, and let's set this to null. Go. Let's try again. I've got 2. Now let's test this in another way. App methods, and it should be private. Let's reload, and this time, as you can see, I'm only getting private conversation. And if I change this to group, it's not actually working. So let me check my enum. This is group. We are not actually a part of this group, so this is the reason we are not actually getting any data. So let's add this user, conversation members, conversation ID, which it is group, and let's add this as admin. Now let's try. Let's reload. There's still no data here. So what am I missing? Member ID, conversation ID, which is group. Edit this. You're actually user number 1, so that was another mistake. And here, as you can see, it's working, so that was my bad. So everything looks great with our queries. Let's also add the friends to make sure this one is also working, since we already messed up once. User 1 to user 2. Let's set this to approved for now. Go, and let's reload. There's an error. We didn't actually add relations for friends and users, so let's fix this. So let's open our friends. Here we need to add user 1 and user 2, since we actually used Vuet here. Public function user 1, and the relation is belongs to user class and user ID 1. Let's duplicate this, and let's change this 1 to 2. Let's reload. Hopefully it's working. Yeah, it's working actually. I've got user information approved. Now if we change to not approved, this time, as you can see, I'm not getting everything. And if we change this friend status, let's reload. This time I should get this one. So where's the problem? Not approved. Let's check our types. Not approved. Request. Let's check. And this time, as you can see, it's working, so everything looks great and everything is working. And the first time, the reason I didn't actually get the result for the first one is because simply we're actually requesting for friend. As you can see, user one is the current logged in user, and the reason it didn't work was simply because we are requesting. Now if I change this to 2 and change this to 1, now this time, as you can see, I'm getting nothing. Now if we change this to not approved, as you can see, we're going to get the result for this query. So I'm going to set this to default, and everything looks great for now. And that's it for this video. Please don't forget to like and subscribe, and we really need your support. And good luck and have fun. Thanks for watching.